Captain Vexthar of the Corvathi Hunter fleet watched his tactical display with satisfaction as the refugee convoy struggled to maintain formation. 36 civilian vessels, their hulls scarred and patched from previous encounters, limped through the void at barely half impulse speed. The weak always fell behind in the Galactic order, and the Corvathi had perfected the art of hunting stragglers. "Adjust pursuit vectors," Vexthar commanded, his clawed hand gripping the command throne. "I want them to see us. Let the fear ripen before we harvest." Lieutenant Krentel's mandibles clicked acknowledgement as he relayed the orders. Across the void, 8 Corvathi hunter ships moved into flanking positions, their predatory silhouettes cutting through space like sharks circling wounded prey. The refugees were Dalvine, a species known for their diplomatic skills and cultural achievements but utterly lacking in military capabilities. Perfect targets. The convoy had fled their homeworld 3 cycles ago when the Corvathi Dominion declared their system part of the expansion territories. Now they sought sanctuary in neutral space, hoping to reach the Galactic assembly stations before the hunters caught them. But neutral space was still a dozen light-years away, and the Corvathi ships were faster, better armed, and closing the distance with methodical precision. "Reading panic transmissions from the convoy," Krentel reported, his voice carrying satisfaction. "They are broadcasting distress calls on all frequencies, the usual pleas for mercy and appeals to galactic law." Vexthar's expression hardened. Galactic law. The phrase was a joke among the Corvathi military. The assembly had no enforcement arm, no fleet capable of challenging a determined predator species. They passed resolutions and issued condemnations while the strong took what they wanted. The Dalvine would learn this lesson soon enough. "Time to weapons range," Vexthar asked. 30 minutes at current pursuit speed, Krentel replied. "The convoy is attempting to increase velocity, but their drives are failing. 2 of their vessels are showing critical power fluctuations. They will be dead in space within the hour." Perfect. Vexthar allowed himself a predatory smile. The hunt was reaching its conclusion. Once in weapons range, they would disable the convoy's engines and board the vessels. The Dalvine would be processed according to Dominion protocols, their ships stripped for salvage, their people dispersed to labor colonies throughout Corvathi space. Another successful operation to add to his record. The bridge fell into comfortable routine as the hunters closed on their prey. Weapons officers checked targeting systems. Engineering reported power levels optimal. Communications monitored the increasingly desperate distress calls from the convoy. Everything proceeded according to plan. Then the sensors officer's voice cut through the routine with uncharacteristic urgency. "Captain, detecting spatial anomaly bearing 270, distance 300,000 kilometers." Vexthar's attention shifted from the convoy to the new contact. "Identify." "Unknown vessel emerging from faster-than-light transit," the officer replied, his voice uncertain. "Energy signature does not match any known classification." Mass displacement indicates a medium-sized warship, but the drive emissions are completely unfamiliar. The tactical display updated to show the new arrival, a single contact, positioning itself between the hunter fleet and the refugee convoy. Vexthar studied the readout with growing irritation. Some mercenary outfit, perhaps, hired by the Dalvine to provide escort. Foolish of them to commit only 1 ship against 8 Corvathi hunters. "Scan the vessel," Vexthar ordered. "Get me full tactical data, weapons, defenses, propulsion capabilities." The sensors officer worked his console, then paused, his expression confused. "Captain, the vessel is actively resisting our scans. Their electronic countermeasures are more sophisticated than anything in our database. I can penetrate partially, but the returns are fragmentary." That was unusual. Most species relied on passive defenses or simple jamming techniques. Active countermeasures that could defeat Corvathi military-grade sensors suggested a level of technical sophistication typically found only in the most advanced civilizations. But even the assembly's best ships could not completely block Corvathi scans. "Visual confirmation," Vexthar commanded. The main view screen shifted to display optical magnification of the new arrival. The image took several seconds to resolve fully, as the computer enhanced the distant contact. When it finally appeared, several officers made involuntary sounds of surprise. The vessel was unlike anything in standard galactic configurations. Where most ships followed organic curves or geometric precision, this one combined both into something that seemed simultaneously elegant and dangerous. The hull was dark gray, almost black, with subtle angular features that suggested stealth considerations. The drive section glowed with a pale blue luminescence that pulsed in rhythmic patterns. Weapon ports dotted the hull in asymmetrical arrangements that defied conventional targeting doctrine. Size estimate, Vexthar asked. Approximately 200 meters length, 60 meters beam, the sensors officer replied. Smaller than our hunters but significantly larger than a standard escort craft. Mass distribution suggests heavy armor and substantial power generation. Vexthar considered the data. A single ship, even a well-armed one, posed no real threat to 8 hunters operating in coordinated formation. Whoever commanded that vessel had made a fatal error in judgment. "Open a channel," Vexthar commanded. "Let me speak to this fool who thinks to interfere with Corvathi operations." Communications established the link. The main screen split to show both the mystery vessel and an interior view of its bridge. A single figure appeared in the command chair, and Vexthar felt a moment of confusion. The being was unlike any species he had encountered in 3 decades of military service. The creature was bipedal, roughly humanoid in proportion, with smooth skin and unusual facial features. It wore a dark blue uniform with subtle insignia that meant nothing to Corvathi databases. Most striking were its eyes, which regarded Vexthar with an expression he could not quite categorize. Not fear, not aggression. Something else entirely. "This is Captain Daniel Lawson of the Earth Alliance vessel Valiant," the being said, its voice calm and measured. "You are in pursuit of civilian refugees who have requested protection under humanitarian protocols. I am here to ensure their safe passage to neutral space." Earth Alliance. Vexthar searched his memory but found no record of such an organization. A newly spacefaring species, perhaps, ignorant of galactic realities and foolish enough to challenge established powers. "Unknown vessel, you are interfering with lawful operations of the Corvathi Dominion," Vexthar replied, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "These refugees are subjects fleeing their obligations to the Dominion. They will be returned to face justice. Your presence here is unwelcome and will be noted in our report to the Galactic Assembly." The human captain's expression did not change. "The Galactic Assembly recognizes the right of civilian populations to flee conflict zones and seek asylum. These refugees are exercising that right. You have no authority to prevent their transit." Vexthar's mandibles clicked in irritation. "The Assembly has no enforcement capability. Their recognition means nothing without power to back it. You command a single vessel against 8 Corvathi hunters. Stand aside or be destroyed along with those you attempt to protect." Still no change in the human's demeanor. No fear, no bluster, just that steady, measuring gaze. "Captain Vexthar, I'm going to give you a piece of information that might help you reconsider," Lawson said. "Earth joined the galactic community approximately 12 standard years ago. During that time, we have maintained a policy of non-interference in territorial disputes and internal conflicts. However, we do take humanitarian operations seriously. Very seriously." 12 years, Vexthar repeated, allowing contempt to color his voice. "The Corvathi Dominion has maintained its position for 8 centuries. Your species is an infant in galactic terms. You have no understanding of power dynamics or established order. Now stand aside before you learn a painful lesson." The human leaned forward slightly. "Captain, I'm reading your tactical formation. 8 Hunter-class vessels, standard Corvathi configuration. Each mounts approximately 40 missile tubes, 6 plasma cannons, and point defense systems. Your shields are 4th-generation Corvathi military specification. Your engines can achieve approximately 0.7 light speed. Your weapons range is approximately 50,000 kilometers for missiles, 20,000 for directed energy weapons." Vexthar felt a chill run through his body. That information was military classified, available only to Corvathi forces and their intelligence services. How had this unknown species obtained such detailed specifications? Now let me tell you about the Valiant, Lawson continued. We have 90 vertical launch cells loaded with various munitions. Our directed energy weapons can fire continuously at effective range of 75,000 kilometers. Our shields regenerate faster than your weapons can damage them. Our electronic warfare suite is currently mapping every system on your 8 ships and could disable them remotely if I gave the order. And this is a patrol frigate, Captain. Not even close to our most capable vessels. Silence filled the Corvathi bridge. Several officers exchanged uncertain glances. Krentel's mandibles had stopped moving entirely, frozen in an expression of shock. You are bluffing, Vexthar said, but his voice lacked conviction. No species achieved such capabilities in 12 years. We achieved nuclear weapons in 40 years, Captain. We reached our own moon in 70. We built a permanent space station in 100. And we did all of that before we discovered faster-than-light travel. When we finally broke the light barrier, we already had centuries of military and engineering experience to build upon. The galaxy has been relatively peaceful for the past few thousand years. Most species develop their technology gradually, with plenty of time for cultural advancement and diplomatic solutions. Earth has been at war with itself for most of its recorded history. When we finally unified and turned our attention to the stars, we brought with us a very particular set of skills. The human captain paused, then added quietly, "We really hope we never have to use them against fellow sapient beings, but we will absolutely use them to protect refugees fleeing persecution." Vexthar studied his tactical displays again. His weapons officers were reporting that their targeting computers could not achieve solid locks on the human vessel. The sensors continued to provide fragmentary data riddled with contradictions, and now his communications officer was gesturing urgently. "What is it?" Vexthar snapped. "Captain, we are detecting additional spatial anomalies, multiple contacts emerging from faster-than-light transit, distance varying between 100,000 to 500,000 kilometers." The tactical display updated rapidly. New contacts appeared throughout the surrounding space. 1, 3, 7, 15, 20. The numbers kept climbing as more vessels dropped out of FTL transit with precision that suggested extensive coordination. "Reading 38 human vessels," the sensors officer reported, his voice hollow. "Classifications include frigates, destroyers, cruisers, and at least 4 vessels of capital ship displacement. All are positioning in defensive formations around the refugee convoy." The view screen split to show multiple angles. Everywhere Vexthar looked, human warships hung in the void like waiting predators. They had appeared with such speed and precision that there had been no warning, no time to react. The Hunter fleet was now surrounded. "As I said," Captain Lawson's voice came through the still open channel, "we take humanitarian operations seriously. The vessels you see now represent our local patrol group. They happen to be in the area conducting exercises. If you require additional incentive to reconsider your actions, I can have our battle group here within the hour." Vexthar's claws dug into the armrests of his command throne. Pride warred with survival instinct. The Corvathi had never retreated from inferior forces, and their honor code demanded that challenges be met with strength. But 38 vessels against 8 was not a challenge. It was suicide. You would risk open conflict with the Dominion over a handful of refugees. Vexthar asked, searching for some way to salvage the situation. "I would," Lawson replied simply. "But more importantly, I wouldn't be risking much. Our intelligence suggests the Dominion maintains a total fleet of approximately 3,000 vessels across your entire territory. We have 2,000 ships in this sector alone, with another 8,000 in reserve at Earth. If the Dominion wants to test our resolve, we are prepared to respond comprehensively." The number hit Vexthar like a physical blow. 10,000 warships. Even accounting for exaggeration or deception, if the humans possessed even half that number, they represented a military force unlike anything the galaxy had seen since the ancient wars. "However," Lawson continued, I don't believe this needs to end in violence. You are following orders based on incomplete information. Now you have better information. You can return to your territory and report that an unknown force prevented completion of your mission. No one needs to die today. Vexthar looked at his officers. He saw the same calculation in their eyes that he felt in his own mind. They could fight and almost certainly die in glory, adding their names to the rolls of honored dead, or they could retreat and live to serve the Dominion another day. Stand down weapons, Vexthar ordered quietly. Helm, plot a course back to Dominion space. We will report this encounter to High Command and let them determine the appropriate response. Relief and shame warred on the faces of his crew. Krentel hesitated, then carried out the orders. The Hunter fleet began to disengage, their weapons powering down, their course shifting away from the refugee convoy. A wise decision, Captain, Lawson said. For what it's worth, you and your crew showed courage in withdrawing. It takes strength to change course when presented with new information. The channel closed. The Corvathi Hunter fleet accelerated away from the scene, leaving the human vessels to escort the refugees to safety. Vexthar sat in silence as his ship transitioned to faster than light speed. Around him, the bridge crew worked with subdued efficiency, processing the mission failure and the implications of what they had witnessed. Captain, Krentel said quietly, do you believe their claims? 10,000 warships. Vexthar considered the question. The tactical data, fragmentary though it was, suggested capabilities significantly beyond standard galactic norms. The coordination of the human fleet's arrival indicated extensive experience with large-scale operations, and the confidence in Captain Lawson's voice had not been the bluster of someone overplaying a weak hand. I believe, Vexthar said slowly, that we encountered something the galaxy was not prepared for. A species that developed technology through constant conflict rather than gradual advancement. They are not stronger because they are better than us. They are stronger because they have spent their entire history learning to destroy each other and only recently decided to stop. He turned to face his lieutenant directly. High Command needs to understand this. The humans are not another minor species to be dismissed or exploited. They are potentially the most dangerous military force in known space. And based on what we just saw, they have decided to use that force to protect the weak rather than prey upon them. The journey back to Corvathi space took 6 standard days. During that time, Vexthar compiled a comprehensive report of the encounter. He included every detail, every measurement, every observation his crew had made. The data was incomplete, frustratingly so, but it painted a clear picture of a species far more capable than anyone had suspected. High Command's response came within hours of his report's transmission. Vexthar was ordered to present himself in person at the Central Military Command Complex on the homeworld. No elaboration, no indication of their reaction to his information. The command complex was a fortress built into living rock, its chambers carved from stone and reinforced with advanced materials. Vexthar walked its corridors with growing unease. Officers he passed avoided his gaze. Whispers followed in his wake. By the time he reached the council chamber, he understood that his report had created substantial controversy. The military council consisted of 12 senior officers, each representing a major fleet division. They sat in elevated positions around a central speaking floor, their expressions uniformly stern. Supreme Commander Calvex presided from the highest seat, her scarred face betraying no emotion. Captain Vexthar, Calvex began without preamble, your report describes a situation that some members of this council find difficult to credit. You claim that a single unknown vessel forced the retreat of an entire hunter group. You further claim that this vessel was supported by a fleet of unprecedented size and capability. Several council members have suggested that your report is either grossly exaggerated or represents a failure of nerve rather than genuine tactical assessment. Vexthar kept his voice steady. Supreme Commander, I stand by every detail in my report. My crew can corroborate all observations. Sensor logs are available for analysis. We encountered a species that has developed military technology far in advance of current galactic standards. Your sensor logs show fragmentary data riddled with interference. Another council member interjected. They prove only that you encountered effective countermeasures, not superior capabilities. And your decision to retreat in the face of numerical superiority demonstrates weakness unbecoming of a Corvathi officer. Before Vexthar could respond, the chamber's communication system activated. A junior officer's voice came through with unusual urgency. Supreme Commander, apologies for the interruption. We have received a transmission from the Galactic Assembly. They are requesting immediate conference regarding a formal petition submitted by the Earth Alliance. The matter is being classified as Priority 1. The council members exchanged glances. Calvex gestured for the transmission to be routed to the chamber. The central display activated, showing the familiar logo of the Galactic Assembly followed by an image of their current presiding administrator, a Vrel named Jorakin. Representatives of the Corvathi Dominion, Jorakin began. The Assembly has received a formal petition from the Earth Alliance regarding humanitarian protection protocols. The humans have requested Assembly recognition of a protected humanitarian corridor extending through several sectors currently disputed between various powers. They have offered to enforce this corridor using their own military resources if the Assembly grants authorization. Calvex's expression hardened. The Assembly has no authority to establish military corridors through sovereign space. This petition is meaningless. Ordinarily, yes, Jorakin replied. However, the Earth Alliance has also submitted comprehensive evidence of their military capabilities to support their petition. They have demonstrated that they possess the means to enforce such a corridor with or without Assembly approval. They are seeking our blessing as a courtesy, not requesting our assistance. The display shifted to show tactical data, ship classifications, fleet dispositions, weapons specifications. The numbers matched and exceeded what Captain Lawson had claimed. 10,000 warships confirmed. Production facilities capable of building more at unprecedented rates. Technology that outmatched current galactic military standards in nearly every category. Silence filled the council chamber as the data scrolled past. The Assembly is convening an emergency session in 3 standard days, Jorakin continued. All member states are invited to attend. The humans have also extended a separate invitation to non-member powers, including the Corvathi Dominion. They wish to discuss the establishment of formal humanitarian protocols and the mechanisms by which their enforcement would operate. I strongly encourage your attendance. The transmission ended. The council sat in stunned silence. Finally, Calvex spoke. Captain Vexthar, your report is confirmed. You are commended for your tactical assessment and your decision to preserve your command. You are dismissed. As Vexthar left the chamber, he could hear the council erupting into heated debate. Questions flew back and forth about strategies, alliances, and the complete reassessment of galactic power dynamics. The humans had done in 12 years what most species took millennia to achieve, and they had done it while the rest of the galaxy watched other concerns. 3 days later, the assembly chamber on the neutral station of Concord 7 was filled beyond capacity. Representatives from every major power and dozens of minor states crowded the viewing galleries. The humans had requested a simple, straightforward presentation. They were granted the floor. Admiral Patricia Monroe stood at the central podium. She wore the formal uniform of the Earth Alliance Defense Fleet, dark blue with subtle gold trim and the insignia of Earth on her shoulder. Her gray hair and weathered face spoke of decades of experience. When she began to speak, her voice carried clearly through the chamber. Members of the Galactic Assembly, representatives of non-member states, I thank you for this opportunity to address you. My name is Admiral Patricia Monroe. I commanded Earth's first deep space exploration fleet and have served as senior strategic advisor to our government since first contact with galactic civilization. She paused, her gaze sweeping the assembled delegates. I am not a diplomat. I am a military officer. My government chose me to speak today because they wanted you to hear certain truths from someone who understands their implications. So let me be direct. Humanity has spent the past 12 years observing galactic society. We have studied your cultures, your technologies, your conflicts. We have kept our capabilities intentionally vague, not out of deception, but out of caution. We wanted to understand this new environment before revealing ourselves fully. What we have learned troubles us deeply. The galaxy is not at peace. It is merely at low-intensity conflict. Species prey upon each other constantly. The strong exploit the weak. Refugees flee persecution only to find no safe harbor. The Assembly passes resolutions with no means to enforce them. Justice exists only for those powerful enough to defend themselves. Monroe's expression hardened. This is not acceptable to us. It is not acceptable to a species that spent centuries fighting itself before finally learning that strength must be tempered with conscience. We have the power to change things. The question is whether we should. The chamber erupted with voices. Monroe waited patiently for silence to return. When it did, she continued. Our proposal is simple. We will establish and enforce humanitarian corridors through disputed space. Any civilian vessel fleeing conflict may transit these corridors under Earth Alliance protection. Any attempt to interfere with refugee movements through these corridors will be met with immediate military response. We seek Assembly endorsement not because we need your permission, but because we believe international institutions should have legitimacy. We understand this represents a fundamental change to galactic power dynamics. We understand that some of you will resent our intervention. We understand that we are imposing human values on a diverse collection of species with their own histories and cultures. We are aware of all these concerns. We have considered them carefully, and we have decided to proceed regardless. Monroe leaned forward slightly, her voice dropping but somehow carrying even more weight. Because the alternative is to watch injustice continue while we have the power to stop it. And humanity has learned the hard way that neutrality in the face of oppression is complicity. The Admiral straightened. We invite all interested parties to join us in developing formal protocols for humanitarian operations. We hope the Assembly will provide oversight and legitimacy to these efforts. But make no mistake, with or without your cooperation, the corridors will be established. With or without your approval, Earth Alliance forces will protect civilian populations fleeing persecution. We did not ask to be the galaxy's police force. We did not seek this responsibility. But we have the capability, and capability creates obligation. Our history taught us that the strongest among us have a duty to protect the weakest. We are prepared to fulfill that duty, Monroe concluded simply. We hope you will work with us. We ask for your cooperation, but we do not require your permission. Thank you for your time. The chamber exploded into chaos as she stepped down from the podium. Delegations shouted questions. Others demanded recognition to respond. Some species walked out in protest while others rushed to speak with the human delegation. Vexthar, watching from the Corvathi delegation section, felt something he had never experienced in his military career: profound uncertainty about the future. The humans had just announced their intention to reshape galactic order through force of arms. They had done so politely, formally, and with apparent sincerity, and they clearly possessed the military power to back their claims. The debate raged for hours. Some species welcomed the human proposal, seeing it as protection they had long needed but never received. Others condemned it as imperialism disguised as humanitarianism. The Assembly fractured along multiple fault lines as different factions tried to position themselves relative to this new power. By the end of the session, no consensus had been reached. The Assembly agreed to further discussions, but could not bring itself to either endorse or condemn the human proposal. The vote was postponed indefinitely as member states consulted with their governments. It did not matter. Within a week, the first humanitarian corridor was operational. Earth Alliance vessels established patrol routes and announced safe transit procedures. Word spread quickly among refugee populations. The corridors were real, and they were protected by forces that even the most aggressive powers respected. 3 months after the Assembly debate, Captain Vexthar received new orders. The Corvathi Dominion had entered into preliminary negotiations with the Earth Alliance regarding mutual recognition of borders and civilian protection protocols. As someone with first-hand experience of human capabilities, Vexthar was assigned to the diplomatic mission as military liaison. The negotiations took place on a human station designated New Geneva, located in neutral space equidistant between Earth and Corvathi territories. The station was impressive in its engineering, combining human architectural styles with considerations for various species' environmental needs. Vexthar found himself grudgingly appreciating the attention to detail. The Corvathi delegation was led by Diplomat General Hexmer, a skilled negotiator with decades of experience in galactic politics, but even she seemed uncertain how to approach these discussions. The humans held overwhelming military advantage yet conducted negotiations as if seeking genuine partnership rather than dictating terms. On the second day of talks, Vexthar encountered Captain Lawson in one of the station's observation lounges. The human was standing at the large viewport, watching ships move through the void. He turned as Vexthar approached, a slight smile on his face. "Captain Vexthar," Lawson greeted him. "I'm glad you survived our encounter." "I meant what I said about respecting your decision to withdraw. You put me in an impossible position," Vexthar replied, not entirely without bitterness. "Retreat was humiliating, but attack would have been suicide." "Yes," Lawson agreed simply. "I designed the situation that way, maximum deterrence with minimal risk of actual violence. My orders were to prevent harm to the refugees without starting an interstellar war. I believe I accomplished both objectives." Vexthar studied the human captain. "Why are you really doing this? Your species has the power to conquer significant portions of the galaxy. Instead, you use that power to protect refugees and negotiate treaties. It makes no strategic sense." Lawson turned back to the viewport. "Captain, my grandfather fought in the last major war on Earth. It was brutal, destructive, and nearly ended our civilization. He survived and spent the rest of his life working for peace. He used to tell me that true strength isn't measured by what you can take, but by what you choose to protect. Humanity built weapons capable of destroying our entire planet. We developed military technology that could have rendered Earth uninhabitable. We stood on the edge of extinction and somehow chose to step back. That experience shaped everything that followed. When we finally reached the stars and found a galaxy full of life, we had a choice: become another predator species or try to build something better." The human captain's expression was somber. "We chose better, not because we're more moral than other species, but because we've seen where the alternative leads. The Corvathi hunt refugees because you've never faced existential consequences for your actions. You've never stood at the precipice and looked down. We have, and we remember." "So you will impose your morality on the rest of the galaxy?" Vexthar challenged. "Only in the most basic sense," Lawson replied. "We will not interfere in your internal affairs. We will not dictate your government or culture. We will not prevent territorial disputes or economic competition. But we will absolutely prevent civilian populations from being slaughtered or enslaved. We will protect refugees. We will enforce humanitarian standards. And yes, we will use force if necessary to do so." "That still sounds like imperialism," Vexthar observed. "Perhaps," Lawson conceded. "Or perhaps it's simply responsibility. We have the power, we have the experience, we have the will, and we have the moral clarity born from nearly destroying ourselves. Those factors combine to create obligation. The only question is whether we meet that obligation or pretend it doesn't exist." Vexthar felt something shift in his understanding. The humans were not conquerors or saviors. They were simply a species that had developed terrifying capabilities and chosen to use them according to principles forged in their own brutal history. Whether that made them noble or dangerous remained to be seen. The negotiations continued for 2 weeks. Eventually, an agreement was reached. The Corvathi Dominion recognized Earth Alliance humanitarian corridors in exchange for human non-interference in internal Corvathi affairs and certain resource-sharing arrangements. It was not a perfect treaty. Both sides made compromises, but it established a framework for coexistence between a rising power and an established one. Similar negotiations followed with other major powers. Some species welcomed human involvement enthusiastically. Others resisted but eventually accommodated. A few attempted to challenge human forces militarily and learned painful lessons about the gap between their capabilities and Earth's. Within 2 years, the humanitarian corridors had become permanent fixtures of galactic geography. Refugee movements increased as word spread of safe passage. The Assembly, initially paralyzed by the human proposal, eventually provided formal recognition and established oversight mechanisms. The galaxy's power dynamics had shifted fundamentally. Captain Vexthar eventually retired from active military service. He accepted a position as a lecturer at the Corvathi Naval Academy, where he taught courses on changing strategic paradigms and adaptive tactics. His first lesson in every course covered the encounter with the Valiant. "The galaxy is not what it was," he would tell his students. For millennia, power dynamics remained relatively stable. Species rose and fell according to predictable patterns. Then humanity arrived, and all our assumptions proved inadequate. They possessed capabilities we did not expect. They applied those capabilities in ways we did not anticipate. And most importantly, they demonstrated that military power could be exercised with restraint rather than domination. Some of you will spend your careers resenting the humans. Some will admire them. Most will simply adapt to the new reality. But understand this, they changed everything. Not through conquest or deception, but by proving that strength could serve justice. Whether you approve or disapprove matters less than whether you understand, because the species that understands the humans will survive. The ones that do not will become cautionary examples. Years later, when asked by a young officer about his most significant military experience, Vexthar did not hesitate. "I saw my fleet surrounded by superior forces," he said. "I faced a commander who could have destroyed us but chose instead to give us a chance to retreat. In that moment, I learned that true power lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the wisdom to show mercy. The humans possess both capabilities in abundance. That makes them the most dangerous and most valuable species in the galaxy." The refugee convoy that sparked the initial encounter eventually reached assembly space safely. The Dalvine established a new colony on a world designated for displaced populations. They named their primary settlement Valiant, in honor of the ship that had protected them when they had no other hope. Admiral Monroe continued to serve as Earth's primary representative in galactic military matters. She oversaw the expansion of humanitarian operations and the integration of human forces into broader peacekeeping efforts. When asked by a journalist how long Earth would maintain its protective role, her answer was characteristically direct. "Until it is no longer necessary. Until the galaxy develops its own mechanisms for protecting the vulnerable. Until justice becomes self-sustaining rather than dependent on external enforcement. We are not seeking permanent authority. We are trying to build systems that make our involvement unnecessary. That will take time, perhaps decades, perhaps centuries. But we are patient, and we are committed." The galactic community gradually adjusted to the new order. Trade flourished as instability decreased. Scientific cooperation increased as species felt more secure. The Assembly gained genuine authority for the first time in its history, backed by human willingness to enforce its rulings in humanitarian matters. Not everyone appreciated the changes. Some species resented human influence and worked to undermine it through diplomatic means. Others tested the boundaries of acceptable behavior, probing for weaknesses in human resolve. Earth responded with consistent principle. Territorial disputes and internal matters were left to local resolution, but any attempt to harm civilian populations brought immediate intervention. The hunter ships that had once preyed upon refugees found themselves with diminishing opportunities. Some adapted to legitimate commerce. Others persisted in their practices and encountered human patrol vessels. Few made that mistake twice. Captain Daniel Lawson continued commanding vessels in humanitarian service for another decade before accepting promotion to admiral rank. On his last day aboard the Valiant, he stood in the observation lounge where Vexthar had once watched the void. His executive officer, Commander Sarah Blake, joined him. "We made a difference," Blake said quietly. "The corridors work. Refugees reach safety. The galaxy is more stable." Lawson nodded. did what we could with the power we were given. That's all anyone can do. Use their capabilities in service of something larger than themselves. Do you think it will last? Blake asked. When we're gone, when Earth's focus shifts, will the galaxy maintain these protections? I think we're teaching the galaxy a different way of thinking about power, Lawson replied. Some species will embrace it, others will resist, but the example will remain. Future generations will remember that strength can serve justice. That capability creates responsibility. That military force can protect rather than exploit. Those lessons have a way of persisting once established. He turned from the viewport. Besides, we're not leaving. Earth will maintain its humanitarian operations indefinitely. This is who we are now. A species that learned to stop destroying itself and chose to help others do the same. That identity is powerful. It gives our society purpose and direction. We won't abandon it easily. The Valiant continued its service long after Lawson's departure. The ship became something of a legend in galactic circles, the vessel that had faced down a hunter fleet and forced the beginning of change. Its crew wore the reputation with quiet pride, understanding that they served as symbols of something larger than themselves. Decades passed. The humanitarian corridors evolved into permanent institutions. The assembly gained credibility as human backing gave its rulings meaningful consequences. New species joining galactic civilization found a community more stable and just than what earlier members had experienced. The story of the hunter ships and the human vessel that appeared to stop them became part of galactic lore. Different species told the tale with their own interpretations and emphases, but all versions included certain core elements. The refugees fleeing persecution, the predators closing in, the sudden appearance of overwhelming force wielded with discipline and purpose. And in all versions, the lesson was clear. Humanity had entered the galactic stage with capabilities that shocked established powers, but more importantly, they had demonstrated that military strength could be exercised in service of conscience rather than conquest. In a galaxy accustomed to predators, they had chosen to be protectors. The hunter ships still existed, though their numbers had dwindled and their opportunities had contracted. And when they considered pursuing prey through disputed space, they remembered the Valiant appearing from the darkness, remembered the calm voice offering one chance to retreat, remembered the fleet that had materialized to back that offer. Most chose not to test whether such protection would appear again, because the galaxy had learned a fundamental truth. When the hunter ships closed in, there was a chance that a human vessel would appear. And when that happened, everything changed.